My name's Steve Swatton. I'm the CEO of CopperCorp. CopperCorp is a company on the TSX, and we have copper and rare earth assets in Tasmania. And at the moment, we're totally focused on Tasmania. And we have roughly 1,800 square kilometers on the island in the northwest.
Steve, thank you for the introduction. Let's just kind of put this in context, because you've got a small market capitalization, but you've got some kind of big aspirations and some big exploration targets. Am I right in thinking that the thesis of an explorer should be explore for the big project?
Exactly. I mean, at the moment, look, as you know, I mean, we don't need to go into it in detail, but the junior market is looking pretty dire. However, we have roughly 5 million in the bank right now, and that's considered pretty significant in this day. But we also picked up this Razorback, which was the subject of last but one news release, and it's also comes with rare earths. So we have put together a budget for drilling this spring, because now it's in Australia, this is spring, and we're going to go ahead with a fairly aggressive program, but still we'll have enough money in the bank for another at least a year to 2 years. So even with this drilling program that we're putting together, and we had a bit of a preamble before we came on here, Merlin, about the whole market, and we got to be seen to be doing something. But the corollary of the whole thing is that what we're trying to do is also get the majors interested in. And as you quite rightly pointed out, the size of a property is very important when the majors want to go into districts. And there's several examples. I used to work for two of the majors, Rio Tinto in my early years and BHP more lately. And look, they're not interested in taking one asset sort of situations. They're looking for district-sized plays. So we've got the district-sized play with something that we're doing we'll be looking to do a preliminary resource on, which is the Alpine asset that we have. And then now we're going to be drilling this new one that we've had our eye on for prior to me even coming onto the board a couple of years ago, which has got rare earths. Now, when we applied for it, we didn't actually, the rare earths were not such an interesting situation as they are now, politically and everything. I don't need really to go into. I'm sure that listeners, viewers know about the conundrum we have with rare earths and it held in the hands of one major player, China. But, you know, we actually have a significant asset now which has both copper, rare earths, and possibly gold at the north. But we're just south of an past operating copper gold mine called Mount Lyell, which is 3 million tons of contained copper, million ounces of gold, and we got the land in the south of it.
Okay, Michael, a lot to unpack in that. You said you were looking to target a preliminary resource at Alpine. Does that mean you're going to be doing any drilling on that, or is that just not just, but is that more desk work and kind of configuring what the data you've got? Absolutely,
Merlin. I mean, unfortunately for us, I'd say if you look at it, we're finding that the grades are getting better at depth, and so therefore this could be, you know, something like a bulk underground type situation. So we require a more advanced level of investigation of it, and we obviously need more deeper drilling. As you know, deeper drilling is expensive, and when you've got a limited budget, maybe it's not wise for us to be doing it ourselves. So we're looking to maybe partner that project with a mid-size or a larger company, but certainly Razorback, where we know the mineralization starts to surface, would get more bang for our buck at the moment, drilling that particular property rather than spending a huge amount of money on doing a resource calculation at Alpine.
Okay, so at Alpine, it sounds as if there's kind of you've got some data points, and it's probably enough to call it an advanced exploration target, conceptual target, but you need more drilling, and you'll probably want that to be funded by a partner to take that to a JORC compliant or an NI 43-101 compliant inferred resource.
Exactly. Yeah, we made a good start, but we don't want to. You know, in previous times we've been able to raise the capital and do it, but right now, capital is key, and we're trying to preserve the capital.
Okay, and then there's also an implicit shift in one of your comments. You said, you're going to target the rare earths, which implicitly means that you're stepping back from copper. I'd love to hear your thoughts on why. I know we can see it in the market, but your views on copper investment in the next few days, so in the next few months and years, let's say through 2024, your take on copper as a kind of an exploration target?
Okay, there's a couple of questions you asked there. What the interesting thing about IOCGs is they all have a little bit of rare earths in it. And this project that we're drilling called Darwin in the south of the Razorback claim is actually an IOCG as well. It just happens to be the rare earth end of it. And if you imagine a rare earth situation, they got epithermal at the top, and the closer it is to the intrusive at the bottom, you have a different suite of rupes. So at the top we have 1-to-1 copper gold, and that's close to the Mount Lyell mine. So if you imagine the whole thing tilted on its side, and we've got the Darwin end of it, we've got the rare earths which are closer to the intrusive. So the whole thing is the same system, and we have roughly 80 kilometers of this system. It just tends to be, geologically speaking, Razorback is deeper than the Mount Lyell, which is the epithermal at the top. So in terms of the copper going forward, I mean, I think, obviously, I don't need to tell you this, the market is very robust for copper for all the reasons, EVs and everything else, and the electrification. We don't need really to go into that. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. But right now, there seems to be a lot of discussions around the rare earth situation in terms of where's it going to come from, who's going to produce it. Lynas is the big one, Mount Lyell in Australia. Malaysia is now not doing any exports anymore. And China are beginning not to export some of their rare earths either, or not do any production from China to certain places in the world. So we got a situation where rare earths are quite politically hot potato, and we're really not sure what we have, except for the fact that we have, from previous drilling, 30 meters at 2.1% total rare earth. And within that, we do have the ones that everybody seems to want, which is praseodymium, neodymium, the heavy rare earths. So look, it's early days, and that drilling was done a few years ago when rare earths weren't so topical. So it's kind of almost like our sweetener on it is a copper gold situation we're dealing with, but that one tends to have the rare earths down at the southern end of the property. So we'll probably start drilling there first, Merlin, and then we'll the north closer to the old Mount Lyell copper gold mine, which still has 25 years mine life, by the way, according to New Century, which was the last people to do a resource calculator. So it's pretty big. In fact, that mine used to be the largest in the British Empire in its day. It's huge. It was massive. I mean, second largest is just up the road here in Vancouver, in a place called Britannia. But, you know, it's even by today's standards, it would be considered a world-class sort of size. This is Mount Lyell. And, yeah, we have all of the adjacent ground in the same type of rocks. So, look, we have good possibilities, but here we're juggling budget with expectations of the shareholder, with what's going to also appeal to a major company to maybe come in and, you know, we can take a bit of a piggyback ride on using some of their capital and not diluting the shareholders any further than we need to. One
of the favourite things to do in a time when capital is constrained is to do desk studies. And you've got this new license area. I mean, have you run through any of the kind of the new hyperspectral imagery? Have you looked at any of the kind of the top-down stuff that can be done on a macro level? Have you done kind of structural and studies of the whole area? You know, what can you do, or have you done, or are you doing to enhance or vector in on the mineral hotspots without actually the kind of the boots on the ground kind of stuff?
Yeah, in fact, we spent the last 2 or 3 months doing that. I mean, there was quite a process leading up to us getting this license, simply because it was in the hands of the government. They were doing the sale of it, and it took a long time, but we heard quite early on that we were going to get it, but we didn't have the official paperwork. So the last news release was just saying, hey, we got but in between that time, we have done a lot of desktops. Like the area at the north was drilled in the late 70s and 80s, I believe, the Dukes area, and the area to the south was more recently. And yes, we kind of collated everything we could, but one thing we realized, which was quite significant, is that when they analyzed the core, and all of the core is stored in Hobart, and when we went down and looked at it, they hadn't actually analyzed all of the rare earth intersections for all of the rare earth elements, because it's pretty expensive to do it. So we basically gone and now quartered the core on everything. So there was a lot we could do leading up to this moment. And And honestly, this area here, it's easy to get to when the weather's great, and the weather is now improving. But when the weather's pretty stormy, it can be a little inclement up there. You can work year round. It's a bit like working in northern BC, but now's the time that you want to get in. But we needed to do this homework first before we got in there. There's a bunch of roads going through it, old roads, but at the moment there is a landslip on one part of it that needs to be moved. But it's all doable. But yes, you're right. We did a huge desktop study looking at structural, looking at hyperspectral, looking at all of the drilling that's been done and what they have taken samples of and what they haven't. And we filled in the gaps.
You mentioned the cost of doing the kind of multi-element analysis, and that's changed completely, hasn't it? I mean, the capacity of laboratories in recent years and the ability to do 36 element or more analysis for the same cost has transformed geochemistry and therefore drill core assaying.
Oh, absolutely. And also it's amazing that you can quarter the core and you're basically getting a free drill hole, aren't you? You know, like you're taking all of this stuff that's been done before and they didn't redo it. But you're right, because of the cost, you can afford to do it. But I think the geologist told me that we have 600 samples in the assay lab right now, and there's a roughly 3 to 4 week turnaround. And I understand that they were received last week. So we should have news flow going forward, you know, quite a bit of news flow, not only from the drilling that we're going to do, but from past drilling that has been done.
Mining the archive.
Yeah, you go. I mean, there have been deposits found, Great Bears, a great example of that, where they looked at old drill core and reinterpreted it, and that's exactly what we're doing right now.
So, what is the work program? So, we're pretty close to the last quarter of the year. What's the plan for the last quarter, fourth quarter, and then into the first half of next year?
Yeah, at the moment we're still going through the, and it's a short permitting process in Tasmania, permitting process in order to get the rig on site, and we're expecting to be drilling in Q4. And we're having a directors meeting in Tasmania in 2 weeks' time, and we'll decide on the size of the budget and how we're going to do it. But we're definitely drilling. It's just how much we're going to drill will be decided. Yeah. And
the nature of drilling in an exploration company is that it's always conditional on results, and so you can't tell what's going to happen in Q1 until you've done this round.
Yeah, and also because of the turnaround time, I mean, there are, as I said to you in the preamble here, 4 operating mines close to us. We're always competing with these mines for the 2 assay labs that are on the island. There's one main assay lab that we all use. So it's a 3 to 4 week turnaround. And unfortunately, unlike maybe a copper gold deposit, rare earths don't exactly, you can't really see what's in them by looking at the core. You can see the alteration, but you don't know exactly what's in them. So look, it's going to be a bit of catch up, but you know, as I said, we've already analyzed all of the core that was in the storage shed. So maybe we're going to have a little bit of a head start on that point, but we're always going to be playing a bit of catch up in Q1, Q2 because of the at least 3 to 5 week turnaround that we have from the drilling. But, you know, if we have a large program, obviously we're going to have the results from the first drilling by the time we're on to maybe the third hole. But, yeah.
And what is your kind of target manifestation of rare earths? Are we talking about mineralization in structures, or is it a kind of some particular volcanic rock type? I mean, I'm unfamiliar with rare earths in IOCGs. Yeah. So, I mean, if you could give me a little bit of an education or kind of a steer on what success would look like.
Well, the simple answer to yours is it's in both. Okay, so you have the intrusive, and then obviously the good stuff or the better mineralization goes along structures. And we can definitely, I've got all the data in front of me here. It definitely seems to be a northwest trending structure, and within that area, there's about 2 to 3 kilometers by 2 kilometers that has rare earth rocks being analyzed at surface, but it's never been drilled before. So this is particularly exciting to us. So we have one drill hole that has 30 meters at 2% rare earth elements, and we have mineralization almost from the top of the hole in that particular hole that I'm thinking of. But then to the north of that, we have 2 to 3 kilometers that have never actually been drilled at all, with known mineralization from rock samples at surface. So it's quite a large area, but yes, it's an intrusive inner structure. That's kind of what we're looking at.
So it's effectively a tabular target at its most simple.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they tend to follow major structural lineaments that go throughout, at the moment. So in IOCG, what's tending to happen here is it's more like a Candelaria. So Candelaria is a 490 million ton asset, very well-known asset that the Lundin have in Chile. And that's a type of, if you like, an IOCG type that we think we have in this part of the world. So the analysis really there is that you have what happens is you have subduction, and then you have a pull-apart basin, you have an IOCG sitting underneath it. And what tends to happen is you have this layering, but it goes in amongst the structures. And what we think we have is Candelaria style mineralization going on for about 80 kilometers of strike, and we have all of it. One of the last news releases we put out was on Dora. We think we may have actually just nicked the edge of something there. But look, there's a whole bunch of these. And like most deposits, Merlin, they tend to occur in clusters, one after the other, but you don't know which one is going to have the main goods. And
but if I remember Candelaria correctly, there's a kind of an intrusion at the base, which is kind of a bulk tonnage. There's a manto, and then there's these little flares on structure coming off the top. And so it's the planar structures off the top, which is kind of what you're describing.
Well, we're nearer down, closer to the source, if you like, of the intrusive. And the higher up would be Mount Lyell. That's the epithermal.
Okay.
So turn the whole thing on its side.
So you've okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So right. So in essence, success would be hanging together a kind of a couple of fences or more over mineralization to show continuity along strike and on dip.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Pretty standard success metrics for exploration.
Yeah, but IOCGs are notoriously difficult, as you probably understand. I mean, they're probably one of the most complex types of mineralization to understand in the business that we're in, to be frank. Because they're different. They've
only been invented recently. I mean, when I was at university, they didn't exist.
Exactly. And same with me. I mean, we kind of knew these oddball things occurred, like, we had in Australia several of them, Carpentaria, Olympic Dam, but nobody was really putting them into a category. But yeah, it's a recent phenomena of classification for sure.
The copper and the gold aspect of this. You've spoken about the majors looking to get a decent land package and access to a regional copper gold play.
England.
Are you finding it really hard to get the attention and the interest from long-term institutional and high net worth investors in copper and gold? Is that a really hard sell at the moment?
Well, I'd say the simple answer is yes. I mean, a year ago, it was pretty easy to get their attention, but these days, there's a bit of fatigue out there, and particularly with junior companies. But having worked, as I mentioned, for two of the majors, I kind of know what they're looking for. And up until this point, Merlin, I didn't really have a story that I could take to them and say, hey, look at this, look at the size of the package, look what we found, look what we might find. But we're at that stage now. So yes, in terms of the high net worth and the fund managers, it kind of goes in one ear out the other right now, and it's not a good time to be saying, hey, we're a little bit different here. Like all of the buzzwords that the majors look for, or the things that they're looking for as well, are 100% renewable energy in a state that supports it. And we all trot that out, and the fund managers all hear this from everybody. But the reality is having worked on that side of it, it really does matter. Location with these guys, because I blew my brains out working at BHP for several years at DRC, and it kind of didn't go anywhere. So we went back to Escondida in Chile and did more exploration, and then we found Escondida Norte. So it is a location that is very extremely important in a safe jurisdiction. And obviously, Australia is in their backyard, so obvious choices would be a bunch of the majors that we all heard of. But yes, they need they need the land size of the package, and they need the right product, and we have it. Gold would not be of interest to BHP, but certainly rare earths and certainly copper would be.
So if you look at the news flow going ahead from here on, after the desk study and the assays that come back and the site visit to Tasmania with your board and the decision on the drill program and everything that ensues from that, is that kind of the news flow that we can kind of expect going forward?
Yeah, and there is one other property that I haven't spoken of before. It's kind of off the main trend of the IOCG that I'm talking about. So Alpine is to the east of the AMC, which Alpine is within, called Jasper, and it has up to 16% copper, and it has up to 30% zinc in it. And it's at surface. It's an old mining camp that was mined in the 1930s, and we're really not sure what on earth this is at the moment. All we know is it's kind of mineral rich, and we're spending a little bit of time. We've done a geophysical program. We've also taken a whole bunch of samples, and we're going to have a discussion when we get down to Tasmania what we want to do with this, because it doesn't seem to fit into the typical IOCG category, but it's one of those other things that was on our list to look at, and it's come up with this incredible numbers. But when you look at the rock, you can't even see the copper in there, most of it. It just looks like chloritic, greenish, but not copper rich rock, coming up with all these interesting grades. So that might be something else that there will be news flow on as well, is that. And yes, so it'll be the Razorback drilling, it'll be results from what we've already done, it'll be a little bit of update on what we're doing in the field, and also maybe this Jasper. There are numerous other prospects that we have along this trend, but obviously trying to preserve capital, will be focusing on maybe these 4 different things that I talked about.
It's interesting. I mean, at Jasper, it's lovely to have high grade. I normally think that high grade comes with small tonnages. It's interesting that it's in a form of mineralization that is not visible to the naked eye. So probably the old timers didn't. Didn't pick it up. They missed it. But it's also talking about the kind of the downturn, where we are at the moment, where the cost of capital is so punitive. I feel that high grade stuff is kind of valuable. I mean, I think people are more comfortable now about relatively smaller projects, but which can pack a punch.
No, absolutely. And if you're talking about high grade, and something I've omitted, which I should now tell you about, is in that area of rare earth mineralization that hasn't been drilled yet, we have up to 16% rare earth, 16. So is it from rock samples? So it's kind of like, okay, it was a bit of we're having a bit of a field day out there trying to work out, well, where do we want to start? If you think about it, 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, we have a large area to be looking at, and we have up to 16% rare earth elements, but there's only 1 or 2 drill holes into this thing. So yeah, the high grade obviously gets everybody's attention. What it really means, we don't know, but it's a good start.
Well, in these markets, you need every hook and every trick to catch the market's attention, and
they do.
Good luck in chasing the high grade and the tons.
Thanks very much, Merlin.